You made it! Welcome to Vienna. We are so glad you're here. This event is part of Vienna Up, the Startup Festival. Have you got your Vienna Up wristband? Put it on and enjoy special offers and activities. Swing by the festival home base, say hi, hang out, and enjoy Viennese Hour to sample local food, wine, beer, and soft drinks for free. And have some fun while making new connections. Visit partnering traditional Viennese coffee houses to sip a free melange, meet new contacts, check your email, or just have ideas both crazy and grand. Enjoy Vienna. Go to viennaup.com, sign up for the newsletter for daily highlights, and we'll see you at the home base.
Yes, you made it. You made it to Smart City Summit 20 and 23. Who is new in the room? Who wasn't here before? Only few people. So many of you know me already. I'm Barbara Inman. I have the pleasure to moderate this lovely conference. I'm working for Climate-led, so this location, innovation space, center that brings different stakeholders together. And I'm super happy to moderate this conference because I shared in the last session that the work on climate can be frustrating. I don't know if you know who noticed that already. A few people, only so few. So you are all super excited and passionate people. I'm very amazed. Maybe you give me your potions that you drink to not be frustrated once in a while. But these kind of conferences where there are so many innovators, people that really want to drive change, motivate me as well. That's why I'm happy to be here today. Before we start, as it's the last session, and it was a long day for the ones that joined already, I would ask you all to quickly get up from your seats and do a bit of stretching. It's good for the backs as well, and we are anyway sitting so much. Yes, great, that looks already good. And then we take it one level further and we do a bit of jumping to get some energy. Yeah, very good. Yeah, some people are high jumpers, very nice. Good. I see you're all fit. I hope now that you are for the last session as well a bit more energetic. Before we start, I still want to thank the Wiener Stadtwerke with Gunda Kirchner. Yeah, one more time, one last time. Woohoo! The Wien Holding, the Klima and Energiefonds, and the City of Vienna for being partners of this lovely conference. I obviously want to thank the Vienna Business Agency for making this conference happen and bringing all these people together, and as well all the input givers on stage, showcasing what Vienna's innovation scene has to offer as part of the whole Vienna Up. And I want to thank the organizing committee of Vienna Business Agency, Impact Hub, Climate Lab, and Zeitecht. These are the people that you met at the entrance, meet at the catering area, or that hide there in the tech area, because these are the people behind the scenes that make these kind of things possible. Maybe quickly what happened till now. Can I have the agenda slide? Thank you. So we actually discussed questions of can cities make a difference? And the answer was definitely yes. They need to be role models, and they need to be the place and space for innovation. How can an economy thrive within planetary boundaries? We need to stop thinking of boundaries, but really envision what a city could look like and how it can be more beautiful than it is now, with a totally different system of economy. Then we talked about how to get to net zero and realized it's complex, but there are already a lot of solutions on the market in the energy area, but as well in the construction and mobility area. And now, last but not least, we will go circular with a wonderful panel. But before we go to the panel and all the panel speakers, and I hand over to Lena, I want to quickly introduce you to Slido again. Ta-da! Yeah, we are using Slido because we not only have you here in the room, but we as well have several people joining online. And if you haven't joined yet, please scan the QR code or go to slido.com, #smart23 as a password. If you haven't done that, code is the right word, thank you. If you have done that, you will be asked a question. In which areas are you already reducing, reusing, recycling? Some principles of circularity. There is double answers possible. And I see that packaging and fashion textiles are quite high. Technical devices as well, 50%. Most of them still in fashion and textiles is probably one of the easier ones as well. Not so many in the terms of building, but we will hear more about that in a second. Or furniture, which is surprising because furniture, I feel, is one of the easy ones as well. But it seems many of you are already thinking of how to go circular in some areas. I said there will be more input on that. And with this, I hand over to Lena Reiser from Urban Innovation, the agency, the Climate and Innovation Agency of the City of Vienna. Thank you, Lena, and you will introduce the panel.
Thank you, Babsi. And thanks to you all, thanks to Babsi especially for making us jump. I mean, you didn't make me sweat, but I for sure had a look at the technicians and their sweat drops formed on their faces. We all with our microphones jumped. So in an area of multi-crisis and escalating environmental challenges, as we heard throughout the whole day, cities are taking on the responsibility of creating sustainable and resilient communities. And especially the concept of the circular economy is gaining momentum as a transformative approach to address these challenges. So by shifting away from the linear model of take, make, dispose, so throw it away once you don't need it anymore, the circular economy aims to keep the resources in use for as long as possible through those 3 R's, but not only those 3 R's. We all know it's 10 R's. I think the audience knows them. I'm not going to make you say them, but they go up to rethink and refuse, actually. So the circular economy holds a great potential for cities to achieve the ambitious goals, being it the SDGs by the United Nations, being it the 2040 climate targets posed by the European Union, or being it the ambitious targets the City of Vienna sets itself, as Executive City Councillor Jürgen Czernohorski mentioned in the morning of today. So there is a lot of potential in circular economy. And speaking of climate goals, we all know that the built environment is responsible for a lot of CO2 emissions. So I'm very glad to welcome our first keynote speaker of the day. I would like to hand over to her right now. It's Bernadette Luger. She's a definite expert on circular economy in the built environment. She is now head of the coordination unit for resource conservation and sustainability in the construction sector. So she's the person you need to talk to and you need to listen to now for the moment. And one of her tasks is to lead the program, the Do Tank Circular City Wien 2020 to 2030. One thing we are not particularly good at sometimes in Vienna is naming things, understand them on an international level. But nevertheless, other things we do very good. So this program is focusing on developing, coordinating and steering measures for the implementation of a circular economy in the built environment. Bernadette, I'm going to hand you the clicker. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I also brought my notes. Thanks a lot, Lena, for the lovely introduction. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad, especially as I've seen that the building industry, construction is supposedly the sector where we are not yet very good at. And I guess what we all want is becoming better. So let's keep going. I think I have roughly 12 minutes. So I propose I will jump straight to the point. And I want to really focus on why and how are we getting to a circular economy. So these are the two aspects that I'm focusing on. And maybe let's get straight to the first question. Why is a circular economy in general important to us? And why do we have to focus on the built environment, on the construction sector? Lena has already gave us some teaser, but the answer is quite simple, and I think we really have to kind of get to it and to really embrace that, especially when we think about carbon neutrality. The construction sector, the houses, the squares, the infrastructure we're living in is responsible for 50% of the extraction of resources. Half of the resources that we extract, we need for the environment that we're constructing for ourselves. So obviously here, we really have the major impact to make a change. And then obviously there is a bit more to it. Let me get to it. We are facing the reality that resources are limited. So they are scarce, and there is a number of primary raw materials that we really need to obtain the standard that we got used to, and these materials are limitless. So there is a moment where they're simply done, and we will not get more of them. Then secondly, we are, especially here in Austria and in Vienna, we're dependent on other countries when it comes to getting these resources. So we really need to think about, and especially when we are remembering Corona, the difficulties with transporting and with getting resources, that we are not flexible. And I think all of us who are working in the construction industry, they can remember in the past 2 or 3 years a couple of problems that we had at our building sites with not receiving the materials that we need and being stopped on our construction sites. So there is something that is dependency. And then thirdly, the way we construct, the way we plan, the way we build, the way we procure, we create a huge amount of waste. And this waste obviously has an impact on our environment, but also on our climate, because the whole production chain, and we often just look at certain aspects of the life cycle, but the whole production chain, when we extract and produce products abroad, when we then transport them, the whole logistics about it, when we construct, all of that is creating emissions. Emissions that at the moment we are not calculating fairly to the construction sector. Often we are calculating these things to mobility, as it's transport, but in reality, all of these emissions, they are connected to the way we construct. And the thing that is frustrating, and you've mentioned it at the beginning, yes, it can be very frustrating, all of that is old news. It's old news. And to be exact, it's 50 years old. Since 50 years, since the early 70s, we know, and we really know because there are publications to it, we know what our way of doing things, what it causes, and what it does. So it's old news, but yet we're not getting tired and we're dealing with it. But I think we really have to be aware that in the last 50 years, there might be some solutions already that we also need to rediscover. So yes, it is about innovation, but yes, maybe it's also about really thinking and looking back and analyzing and what we can do and what we might already discovered but forgotten. But first, let's take a look what happened since 1972, since we know what we know concerning material consumption. Let me show a short graph. And here we go, and just here I really need my notes because I didn't learn that. I see the numbers here also. Well, what happened since 1972 is that material consumption has increased massively, and it continues to rise rapidly, as you can see on the graph. And while the world's population has doubled in the last 50 years from around 3.8 to 7.8 million people, the global consumption of primary raw material, such as minerals, fossil fuels, or biomass, has increased significantly over the same amount of time, namely from around 28.6 to 101.4 gigatons. So it has not only doubled, but it's 4 times as much. And I think this calculation is quite easy. If we continue like that, obviously, we will consume more materials, raw materials. And there are estimations that if we continue like that, we will reach in 2050 around 184 gigatons. And especially if we think about that other nations are not yet on the standard of infrastructure that we have, if they will continue to try to reach that standard with the way we're doing things, it will simply not be possible, and it will not be very comfortable. And this graph shows another thing. It shows that growth and the way we develop things is currently very strongly coupled with the consumption of primary resources And that is the problem. That is not very smart. And the principle behind this logic, we all know it, and Lena has already mentioned it in her introduction. But I want to show it because it's really important that we're very much aware of how we do things. And what we do is, with production, no matter if it's buildings or if it's other products, we take, then we make something out of it, we produce, we use it, and then we dispose it. And in this linear model, we really extract resources on an extreme cost of resources, of emissions, and in an extreme cost. And then we use it for a relatively short amount of time, especially if we think about buildings, and then we just dispose it. And climate crisis and collapsing ecosystems and the aspects that I've mentioned before have just shown that this is not a very intelligent way on how to deal with things. And this is actually where the idea of the circular economy comes in, and it looks quite easy. But the simple idea is that we are creating a closed loop between the production and the utilization, trying to use what is there as much as possible in order to create less weight and extract less resources. And Lena has mentioned it before, this closed loop principle is in the core of the Smart Climate City Strategy Vienna. And yes, this is also a very long title that is always very difficult to say, but it's part of the climate strategy of the City of Vienna. And you see it on the right down corner, the city set itself the goal that by 2030, circular construction and planning is to be standard. Standard means that it is part of our rules and regulations. That this closed loop principle is within all of our requirements, processes, procurement procedures. It really has to be kind of in the core of the way we do things. And well, the big question that leaves me or us with is how are we gonna achieve this? How are we gonna do that? How can we really make a transformation happen that is that big? How can we really make a city circular, especially when we think of that the way we construct right now, it's completely different. We are lacking information about resources, resource catasters. It's all about business models, the people who are acting and working and being part of this transformation. It's quite a complex thing that we have to handle. It's not just changing some rules, but it is really a systemic change that we are coming apart. And another thing that we have learned, and also that the authors of the Planetary Boundaries have taught us, especially Daniela Meadows, who is dealing a lot with system change, is that our traditional linear way of thinking, the way we approach problems right now, it's not going to help us with that transformation, with that step. And I think this is something that is super complicated for all of us, because we're all used to work in our departments and to work in our sectors, but with this way of working, we will not really achieve it. So what we need to do is we really need to get into a systemic way of approach, and this is what we are trying to set up. And it's simply due to the complexity of the topic. So we really need to understand the connections, the dependencies, the interrelationships, as well as the structures and rules between the different sectors. And the key is to think holistically and to link seemingly isolated aspects. And I guess that's the most difficult thing, because this is not the way we are used to do things and the way our structures are built. And if we are translating this to the construction sector or to the building industry, what it means is that, for example, when we think about costs, that we are not only focusing on the construction costs, what we're doing right now. It also means when we speak about emissions, we're not only focusing on the phase of operation, as we do it right now. Translating this to the construction sector really means to open up our view, to really see the whole life cycle holistically, and to see how our actions are interconnecting in order to manage a closed loop. And accordingly, and I don't know if it's big enough to see, but I'm happy to hand out the slide afterwards. Accordingly, along the life cycle, we need to acknowledge the following principles. The built environment is our future stock of resources. It's our urban mine. And activating local potentials, activating what we already have, no matter if it is vacancies or materials or soil, this is key. Design for disassembly and for durability, although it seems to be a paradoxon, is what we need to get to. And then obviously the majority of the city of Vienna is already built. So we really need to find a new way to deal with the existing structure. We need to find new rules when it is okay to break down a building, but when we really have to keep it and to keep on developing it. And if a building then really cannot be used anymore, the dismantling obviously has to be recovery orientated in order to keep the materials in a circulation. In this paradigm shift, we, and this is the team of the Do Think Circular City Vienna 2020 to 2030, we try to involve as many stakeholders as possible. And at the moment, we are working according to the principles defining, demonstrating, and implementing. We try to do that step by step, consecutive, although, of course, these three phases are interlocking. And in terms to get an idea on what we've planned until 2030, because if you remember, that's the goal that we have in the climate strategy. We are currently focusing on creating the essential knowledge bases, the foundation for the topic, such as, for example, an assessment methodology to make circular construction tangible, because ultimately, we all must mean the same thing when you speak of circular construction. I really made the experience that all of us, we have different images, different ideas when you speak about circular construction, what it exactly is. And what we have to do at the moment, of course, against the background of the EU taxonomy and against the background of all these regulations that we have from the European Union, we really need to know how do we measure it, what do we mean by circular construction. We need to define it. We need to have the same image and picture when we speak about the vision and what we want to achieve. So that's what we are working on right now with partners from BOKU, for example, or the Technical University Vienna. And then secondly, the phase of demonstrating that I've mentioned, we of course have to put step by step this developed knowledge, this definitory framework into practice. We have to learn from these demonstrations, and this is what we are starting. There are different refurbishment, but also newly built projects in Vienna, mainly done by the City of Vienna, where we try to implement certain circular aspects in order to learn from that. And then, of course, thirdly and finally, the implementation, the last step until 2030, we have to create a legal framework for the topic, which doesn't mean that against the actual framework, sustainability is not possible, but of course we want to move towards that this is a requirement that everyone has to do. And actually, we managed 2 or 3 weeks ago in the General Assembly of the OEB guideline. They agreed on that the OEB 7 will be developed for the city and for Austria, and this is the basis to implement this topic in the building code. So we managed, or we achieved, to do the first steps already in order to manage the integration in the regulatory framework until 2030. I guess my time is over, my slides as well, so that will be perfect. Yeah, I hope I could give you a good overview. Important for me is that we are obviously focusing on the framework, But yet, I guess there's a lot that we need to achieve when it is about collaboration and discussing what we need concerning business models and innovation in order to keep it going. Because creating a framework is the one thing, but filling it with life and really bringing these things together, making it work and bringing it down to the ground, that's another point. And I'm excited to discuss with you how we manage that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Bernadette. We're going to make room for the table to be removed. And I would like to ask you again to come with me, Bernadette. The second chair is yours. And while you sit there, I will go and introduce all the other panelists that we have invited here. So next up are two people, and their work has already been mentioned in Bernadette's presentation already. So I would like to ask you to come up, Linda Schneider and Bojan Schnabel. They both work for the City of Vienna in the Department of Technical Urban Renewal. And as such, they are responsible for one very, Linda, yours is here, for one very comprehensive urban renewal program called Wien Neu Plus. Short name, easy to remember, hard to say for English-speaking people, but we're getting there. So here we have essentially two people wearing one hat. Now I'm asking another person up here wearing two hats. So this is how agile we are today. So I'd like to ask Florian Hofer up here, who essentially lives circular economy. He definitely has a passion for it. On the one hand, he is the founder and now shareholder of a circular economy startup called Hut und Stiel. Again, probably a naming problem, which roughly translates to hat and stem. And on the other hand, he helps Viennese businesses and institutions in the circular economy sector with his work at the Department Technology Services at Vienna Business Agency. And then I would like to ask Brigitte Reich to come up here. She's a lawyer specialized in environmental and waste law with many years of experience in the waste industry, and she is now managing director of Second Trade, a digital marketplace for trading secondary raw materials. Now I'm going to sit down as well. And Bernadette already talked a lot about the built environment and how we can use it as a resource. And, you know, Vienna is a growing city, but to be perfectly blunt, most of it's already been built. So this is actually the area that Bojan and Linda are tackling with their works, and I'm going to ask them for their input presentation. I think, Bojan, you'll start?
Yes, can I?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, welcome. Thank you very much for having us here. Just to share some humble contribution to the huge challenges we have here. It's like we are one part of a big story and having small steps. Just for explaining you, so Wiener Plus, Vienna New Plus somehow, is a urban renewal program of the City of Vienna, based in the Department for Urban Renewal, which is very important because we have the leadership as a city to make the change and make the shift. And we are aiming somehow at a climate resilient future of existing city areas, and we're giving the framework, what to say, for best practice examples. So we're very much focusing on implementation and showcasing that change is possible and how change is possible. And so we also, what is I think important, is that we try to generate a innovation and transformation dynamics by having these pilot projects, which is very something sometimes untangible, but it's very important that it has shown in the previous projects, Smarter Together and SuMMit, that it works. Though sometimes it's frustrating because we are not yet at the end of the story, at the end of our journey, but obviously it works somehow. So this is the vision we have. We are working with stakeholders with a high leverage potential on one hand. We are working with a broader public also in order to involve the citizens, all the actors, eventually possible actors, including the citizens. And we're working with governance also, and that is a feedback for the presentation we have heard before, in order to ensure feedback loops in the transformation process, in order to feedback our challenges, we facing our needs, eventually in legal terms, to what should be done. So that's why these pilot projects are so important for us, because we have this constant communication. And one thing I'd like to highlight is that we share vision, passion, and what was the third one? Values. I think it's so important. I mean, obviously, it's somehow hardly to explain, but the one thing is the technical change and technical issues which are known, basically, and technicians would find solutions on the internet. But if you don't share the values and the vision and the passion, you don't create the dynamics of change. And we've been yesterday at a meeting. It was really, this is what makes the change, what makes the difference. So just for the short part, we are planning for working for 10 years. We're having specific project areas for about 3 years. We started in 2021 in Innerfavoriten in the 10th district. We are now in the cross district area, Grätzl 20+2, in the 20th project areas. And our pillars are building and energy, open public space, and social participation, local economy participation. I think this is so important to have this holistic approach. We saw that it makes the difference. It's a simply different approach, and eventually it's part of it. We are based on the smart city strategy and all the institutional framework. We are part of it. We are not. This is so important too. And I guess you will show us the concrete examples on where we work in these 3 areas of our pillars, where circular economy is always part of it. Okay, thank you.
So thank you very much, Bojan. I will talk a bit more about especially the left column, the projects in the left column. We tried to approach the topic of circular economy in different ways, and especially also in the building sector and the construction sector. So we tried to do that in 2 different ways. So on one hand, we explored possibilities with 3 different non-profit developers on how upcoming renovations in their properties can be made into a circular process. In that, we made successful use of the format of a co-creation lab that the Vienna Business Agency offers. Well, we couldn't use the knowledge that we gained in the workshop on that specific property we were looking at, but we could transfer the knowledge to another property. So I say it's still a success story. And then we also tried to approach it from the other side, from the side of a construction company, where they were looking at what a typical renovation process looks like right now, and then they analyzed and developed a circular process of a renovation of a building. They didn't only look at the steps that would have to be changed in that whole process, and believe me, it was a lot of steps that would have to be changed, but they also looked at what qualifications would be needed, what new jobs would be created through that. For example, when you're trying to classify materials in the building, or when you're trying to classify, can you reuse the materials on the site, and for the next project, do they have to be recycled, etc.? What qualifications would a person need to do that, in fact? We came to the conclusion, well, with all our projects, we came to the conclusion, or we came to a lot of conclusions, and one is that what Bernadette already mentioned, it needs a fundamental rethinking of this whole renovation process. And this made it sometimes hard for us to communicate to developers, to non-profit developers, etc., because they were asking us, but where do I start? Because it's really hard to just start completely new from the scratch. And it also was sort of difficult to think or to find the proper services on the market, the proper products and services on the market, because there are only a few services right now. And this is really something that we are looking forward to also find today, hopefully products and services that will help us, for example, digitalize the buildings that are already existing and recording, for example, materials and masses, putting them into a database or putting them into a 3D model, for example. But what is lacking and what would have a higher leverage is the financial incentives. Right now, we don't have any funding schemes or financial incentives to actually do a circular renovation. And, well, it would help us a lot, because that is really a trigger for us to implement it in every step in the renovation process. So because of all that, we're very happy to be part of the Do Think Circular City, because they are doing this essential groundwork that we then can use to put it into our pilot project. So I'm very looking forward to the next years.
It's very nice to see that a lot of the departments in the city are already working together. Sounds strange for companies maybe, but for a city as huge as Vienna, it's sometimes a bit of a challenge to get departments to work together, because there's just such a lot of work to do to achieve this transformation. I would like to take up the three words Bojan mentioned, namely vision, passion, and values, because it's something I guess you need when starting up a company. So next up, maybe Florian, can you tell us a bit about your way and about what you did with Hut und Stiel?
Yes, so to clear, now I have my mushroom hat on. Later I will put my second hat on, but now I will maybe leave the discussion about the construction sector and give you some a little food for thought in a literal way. Vienna has a very long tradition of coffee houses. Drinking coffee is part of our culture, and as you have seen in the introduction clip, it's also very important for making connections to other people, which is very crucial for the circular economy as well. What is not so great, though, is that only, oh, no, I don't know my slides, that only a very small amount of the coffee that you put into the coffee machine actually ends up in the drink. And since we drink a lot of coffee, we produce a lot of coffee grounds. It's about or approximately 50,000 kilos of coffee grounds every day. What do we do with it? Is it waste? Do we throw it away? Most of it goes to the residual waste bin, and this is burnt. We have a very pretty incineration plant in Vienna, but still, as the circular economy tells us, the nutritions of biodegradable material should be composted, should go back into the ground and should regenerate nature. And this is what we do with Hut und Stiel, because in nature there is no such thing as waste, and mushrooms are, how do you say, waste, they can compose the waste for us. So this is what we came up with. On the, I don't know on which side it's on your side, I think on the left side is, you see the mushroom cycle that we created. So with the leftovers from making the coffee, we can grow mushrooms on them. We collect them from elderly people homes, big office buildings and stuff like that. And we can make oyster mushrooms with it, very local, a plant-based food that has a very good or very low impact on the planet. We have different products that we make with it, like pestos and sugar and stuff like that. And we also have a small do-it-yourself mushroom grow kit where you can convert your own coffee grounds at home and see how the mushrooms grow on it. So this is our biological cycle of the coffee grounds. Yes.
Thank you, Florian. You can clap if you want. It was only one person clapping, don't take it personally. So no such thing as waste. I think that is something that resonates with Brigitte as well, and also what Linda mentioned, that digitalization can help in achieving a circular economy. What do you do, Brigitte?
Yes, thanks a lot for the nice introduction. I'm really glad that I can be here today and give you a short insight in our business model of second rate. As we just heard, secondary raw materials and digitalization are two of the big drivers for our way to a transformation to a circular economy. Based on this, we developed a new business model for sustainable raw material management. It's second rate. A digital marketplace, so it doesn't work finally. Dann alle durch? Jetzt. Okay. A digital marketplace for secondary raw materials. What does this mean? We offer a B2B trading platform where buyers and sellers of secondary raw materials all over Europe can find each other and can trade their commodities. Which commodities are this? These are now secondary raw materials, especially classically out of recovery and recycling processes. But on the other hand, it's also industrial waste, construction waste, also biogenic residues out of agricultural forestry sectors. So the users of our platform are on the one hand those who have or produce secondary raw materials, for example, recycling companies, producers who have industrial waste elements, and on the other side, those who need secondary raw materials for further product, for further processing, and the idea is to bring them together on our platform. As we just heard today from Bernadette, she did a good job for my presentation, our demand on raw materials is still increasing. We have seen the graphic, you have seen it will double until 2016. So there's a big need to focus on those materials we have here. And the materials we have here in Austria and Europe, a lot of materials of them are those out of waste streams, secondary raw materials. On the other hand, we have a big dependency on raw material imports, so it's important to focus on the materials we have. And therefore, it's really important to keep these materials in circulation and have the possibility to return them to the economic cycle very quickly. And that's the idea of second rate, to offer a solution where you can very quickly, simply, transparent and efficiently manage your sustainable raw material management. You can have a sustainable raw material management, and we can enlarge the market for secondary raw materials. And furthermore, we give the possibility to enable materials to be put to a high-value upcycling process outside the existing recycling channels. So how is the platform working? A very short insight. The idea of the platform is that we are offering a bidding process. Materials are located via bidding process. We, as the platform second rate, are not involved in the process directly. We're just offering the infrastructure. The idea of the platform is to keep it very simple, to offer good documentation. And if one of our users has registered itself, afterwards he has the possibility to upload all the documents he will further need for his trading processes. So this can be, for example, the licenses, the certificates you need for trading secondary raw materials. We are on the waste stream. That's a difference to product streams. And you also have the possibility to upload your general terms of conditions, for example. And if you have uploaded these documents, you have the possibility to base all further trades on these documents. So it simplifies the trading process, and with just a few clicks, you have the possibility to put your material on the platform, and on the other hand, the users or buyers have the possibility to look for the materials they need with our searching filters, or they can install a raw material alert. So the idea of second rate is to simplify the trading process of secondary raw materials by offering an additional digital sale channel. By enlarging the market for them, we offer a good management of different locations, a good documentation, which can also be used for further sustainable reporting. And it's a very secure and transparent process because you have the possibility to check your partners via the certification tools we offer on the platform. So that's the idea, to give a push to secondary raw materials, who will be in future very important to fulfill our demands for raw materials. Thanks a lot. This was a short insight.
Thank you, Brigitte. I would like to stay with you two for my first round of questions. As Vienna Up is a startup festival, Smart City Summit is part of Vienna Up. You both founded your companies a while back, I think 2015 and 2018, just not, even if I'm wrong. Maybe can you tell us a bit about the process or compare the stakeholders and the environment from back then to now? What has changed? Or even, Florian, maybe you can tell a bit about your experience as Vienna Business Agency as well. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to start?
Yes, I'll just start first. Yes, we started in 2018, and I think we've been one of the first movers in the waste management sector with a solution, a digital solution for trading raw materials. And so we've been first confronted with fears. I think it's been classical fears of digitalization, of transparency. Nobody wanted to be transparent, that the competitions or companies see how many raw materials you produce or you sell. And on the other hand, there were fears of people to eliminate their own jobs. There we notice now a change. I think some of the reasons are that the legal framework is changing. We have some changes in the European Union. We have the Green Deal. We have in Austria now the circular economy strategy. I think that's a great push. We have concrete legislations like the Single-Use Plastic Directive or the draft of a battery regulation, which, for example, gives you obligations that you have to mandatory use recycled content for the production of your PET bottles or, for example, your batteries. So there is a change in the frameworks. And on the other hand, I think just the last years with the crisis have shown us that we are really dependent of foreign materials out of foreign countries. And so there is a change in the mindset to focus on the materials we have. And this are a huge amount are secondary raw materials out of waste. And so I think there has change been in the last years, and we noticed this, and this was also the reason that we enlarged our platform to different waste streams. We are coming out of the e-recycling industry, and now we started to open the platform for construction waste, for biogenic residues, and also for wood waste, because we see there is a huge interest in these materials, and they will be needed. And we have them, and the idea is to keep them very simple, very quickly in the circle, and that has changed, I think.
Florian.
For us, it was. I mean, I could talk maybe for an hour about the journey that we had with our startup.
We don't have an hour.
I guess so. So I will try to break it down to the main points. When we started, we just had the vision, like the mushroom circle that you saw. We knew that there was some potential here. There is a lot of coffee grounds in Vienna that was going to waste unused. And we wanted to do something with it and grow mushrooms on it. But we had no clue how to grow mushrooms. We had no idea about how mushrooms work and how do we have to collect the coffee grounds. Is it even legal for us to collect coffee grounds? Do we need some license as a waste collector? Or can we just take it? And will somebody be willing to give it to us? And of course, we did not know if it was a business case or not. So we had our calculations, we filled in our Excel sheets. As you may know, there might be some mistakes in Excel sheets, so you can't always rely on them. So we just thought we might just start and see where the journey takes us. So we went to some coffee shops and asked with a bucket in our hands, please give us some of your coffee grounds. And we made our first experience, and we went from there. We rented a basement where we made our first cultivation rooms. and learned how to grow mushrooms. And we solved the problems with legislations on the way, since this is a topic that nobody could answer us. From the City of Vienna, nobody knew if this was allowed or not. We had to then, at some point, define coffee grounds not as a waste product, but as a side product from coffee making, so that it was legal and stuff like that. And but since then, we gained some maybe reputation, and maybe also maybe the things changed a little, because now people come to us and say, hey, we have a lot of coffee grounds, do you want to use it or not? So we are in a better role, and we make cooperations where it is also from our side more feasible. So we have cooperations with the elderly people homes of Vienna. They produce a lot of coffee grounds compared to a small coffee shop that has maybe 1 or 2 kilos every day. So that went better. And of course, we had a lot of learnings as a startup, what works and what does not work. So we knew the direction, but we did not know the exact way. But we adjusted our compass, and here we are.
But it seems the environment is changing. I'm getting shown the 10-minute sign, but we will manage. So I'm going to a bit faster through our questions. But so environment is changing. Bernadette, then maybe to you, looking at the construction sector, at the market, the current stakeholders, where are the gaps that you see that need to be filled that might be a potential for all of us watching out there?
Well, I'm really happy to hear that things are happening. There is still, we still lack somehow really platforms or marketplaces that are not knowing yours to an exact extent, but that really also fill the gap between we know what is there and then the time we need to use it. Because the problem is when you use primary resources, you first plan and then you buy the products and you use it, you bring it directly to the construction site. If I buy a secondary product, I need to already secure it while I plan it, because I need to plan with it. And then there is a time gap for me until I use it. Unless there's a possibility of reserving it, there needs to be a financial... So this whole kind of integrative planning process that we need to change. I have the feeling that we still need to cooperate better between the market possibilities and the planning processes, because so far this was disconnected and we could buy on demand, but this has changed. So solutions for that or even collaboration, discussion on that is quite important.
Actually, we have a question from the audience. This sort of fits in there. It's from Anna, so thank you, Anna, for that. The City of Vienna would have to provide infrastructure and overall data and storage area for building materials to be reused. Is there a plan to do this? And I think it's directed to you.
Does the city have to... I think it's on again. Yeah, that we need this space and infrastructure, yes, of course. We are right now trying to figure out transforming an industry. So far, the companies, if you think of primary raw materials, there are big marketplaces and shops and possibilities where you can buy these things. Yes, we need space. But to be very frank, if this is, is this the role of the city to give this space? Or so this is something that we still need to figure out. But yes, there needs to be space to work on that material, especially when we dismantle and we put it in place again. But we mustn't forget that when we dismantle a building until we put it into the next building, there are some processes that need to happen. And these processes need a certain infrastructure compared even to creating products in a primary process. So this has to be a business that is doing that. So, but this is a question that we need to figure it out. Definitely, yeah.
Let's stay on a point where there's a role for the City of Vienna, definitely, and it's social housing. Vienna is known for its social housing policy. Just to give the international viewers some context, over 50% of people in Vienna live in social housing. 500,000 people actually also live in municipal housing. So to you, Bojan and Lina, where's the potential there for circular economy, and are the projects that you tried, are they now a blueprint for all other projects in Vienna?
Shall I? Well, obviously we work with social housing, non-profit housing associations, and we work with Wiener Wohnen and Vienna Housing on pilot projects, exactly. Also thinking about circular economy. We have a whole history about this cooperation already, where experiences from a few years ago are now fitting in the processes now. We're not at the end of the journey, I wouldn't say. So there are specific aspects. We have one research project, my Favoriten, which is really interesting, also on specific solutions where our builders say, or housing providers say, almost they have to adapt the planning for every specific building. We don't have a blueprint for all of them. We also have a very varied housing stock from the 1900s to the 50s or 60s or 80s, and they're all different in the approach, and some are easier to be refurbished or rebuilt or renovated according to new principles of circular economy. Others are very difficult. Some architects are easier to work with, or historic architects. Some are more difficult, as we see. This is really an interesting journey, also a learning for us constantly, all the time. Yeah.
The challenge that we are seeing with the social housing, municipal housing, and also the non-profit developers is that they have very tight budgets. It is all regulated by law. They only have a certain amount of money per square meter they can use for constructing. And they already have a lot of standards to live up to, and putting more quality into that would of course help, but it puts a lot more money also in the whole construction thing. So as I said before, we don't have financial incentives right now, but this would help a lot if we put up a funding scheme, especially for those limited and municipal housing, where we can include certain standards, what they would have to do to get the funding for their renovation of the properties.
Can I add
Sure.
something? We are also working on this topic, and we've realized that the funding is obviously a really big lever to work on that. So within the program, we're also discussing with the departments responsible, how can we change certain processes and funding schemes. But also what we're doing is, with our assessment methodology for circular construction, we are trying to evaluate right now what are the costs behind certain measures, to see which things can be implemented easier than others. And then also we mustn't forget that with the change of regulation, also the change of the way how we see what is economically good or bad, or how much things cost, this will change. Because there will be a certain moment where we will have to reuse material, because it simply will be regulated. We also see the EU taxonomy, so there are certain things coming. And for us, as social housing and affordable housing is so important, what we are really trying is to prepare this sector as best as possible, to learn now how do we have to set up processes in order to be able to go with this development, because it will come. This is what we are seeing, and it will not be a question in a couple of years. So I guess it's our responsibility to make sure that especially affordable housing is put very well into this transformation. And I guess this is what we are trying also with merging our programs on that topic.
Okay. I think I need to go through a final round, and I need to do two, and you will later see on why. You all mentioned that collaboration is key, so I'm going to ask you all one question with two answers, and then another question. The first one is, who should contact you after this, and what are the ways? I see some questions here. I'm going to read through them. And who should contact you? Why?
I thought that this would be the question.
Well, you can say that. And what are the ways that maybe companies or startups out there can actually collaborate with you? And maybe let's start with Brigitte again, and then end up with Bernadette.
Of course, those should contact us who have or need raw materials finally and want to use the platform. But I think it's very interesting to talk with other startups, there are a lot of projects now on the way in similar parts of the waste sector. And I think it's very important to talk to each other because there are a lot of synergies. And I think that's very interesting to stay together, come together and discuss how we can finally find solutions for some topics which doesn't fit at the moment, really. So collaboration, I think it's the most important thing.
I'll put up my Vienna Business Agency hat because
Perfect.
I think that's more appropriate then. I would like to invite people and companies to contact me that want to start their journey towards a circular economy. They want to start, they want to make a startup, or they already have a company and want to make the first moves. Maybe they are searching for connections or for a network that we as Vienna Business Agency have to other companies, but also to universities, to the public sector, and so on. We can also provide funding to some extent, of course, and we also have a startup service department that can give you coaching and accelerator programs for your circular startup.
Bojan.
So we're working on very concrete projects in 2 project areas. Now they are defined. You might find them on the webpage. And we also have funding schemes, 2 funding schemes for innovative projects, which are quite substantial. So let's have a look. We're also working with science and research, so we're developing different programs and trying to find concrete implementation projects in our project areas in order to showcase them together. And we then are also networking all our partners and having additional values and results, which I think. So this we're working. So let's see if you're like innovation partner, which would fit in the funding schemes eventually.
I would like to add, because it fits to the session today. We're especially happy about any companies or startups who contact us who offer services or products in the field of circular renovations. It can be digital products. It can be I don't know, anything else that is related to making the renovation process more circular in any way.
If there is anyone who wants to really do a project, like has the financial funds to build something and is willing to try out, then I would be really happy to collaborate with the indicators that we're developing right now according to the EU taxonomy to really see how does it work, what can we implement. But then obviously we're also super interested in anyone who is offering services or products to make construction circular. What would of course help us is if we somehow manage to coordinate this, because in the end of the day, it would make sense if all of us, for example, together, if we manage somehow a meeting where we kind of figure out these contacts. And then what is also very helpful for us is because as we're working on changing the legal framework, if anyone is finding certain barriers, this is actually the things that don't work are especially interesting to us because these are the things that we need to change. So we really need to identify pain points, but we really need to think very precisely, like, where are they and what can we do? So I'm really happy to discuss what is not working, just to find good formats to do it in a structured way, but that would be really great.
Thank you all for those very, very concrete appeals. They are much better than let's be nice to each other and work together. Nevertheless, we heard collaboration is key, and I would like to send my regards out to Laura Fariello, who is unfortunately not here today because her voice simply gave up. So she's healthy, motivated, and would have loved to come, but she simply couldn't do it. And unfortunately, we all don't speak sign language, so that would have been a barrier as well. And just one shout out from her side. She would like to mention that the Circularity Lab is now part of Climate Lab. Maybe Barbara, you can say a few words afterwards on that. It's also a lot of potential to come together, innovate and collaborate together. And now that's really, really the final round. And I need to do it because by chance, all those previous sessions did it as well. And I think it's very nice that from a moderator's perspective, we all thought of the same thing, more or less. So under the premise of challenges exist, but the rewards outweigh them, what makes all of you optimistic to keep working in the field you're working on? Optimistic, Linda. I'd like to start with you, Bernadette.
Actually, I am optimistic. I'm an architect, so a couple of years ago, I don't know, 15 years ago, when I told my first investor that I was building for, that I would like to reuse materials, he was laughing. And actually, I'm laughing now. Like, things are changing, so I'm really staying optimistic, and I will not stop until these things are changed.
Okay, I found an answer.
It didn't take you too long, though.
Luckily. No, I can see that all our partners that we're working with, they are super optimistic they want to change something, and that gives me not only hope, but makes me very happy, and I'm looking so much forward to the future.
Well, I'm working now for 8.5 years for the City of Vienna, and I see a huge potential of hugely engaged and committed and passionate staff, and all our partners, exterior partners, with whom we're working. And we saw all the different change made through the projects, through the years. Things that would be unimaginable 8 years ago are now practice. We are doing now, I mean, PV on social housing or on municipal housing. That was a challenge. We're even doing geothermy. So really, I think that things are changing, and people are more and more passionate to make the change.
All right. What keeps me optimistic is that the system that we have right now was also made by us. So we are the ones that are able to change it for the future and for the better, and to hopefully have a better future. And I like the quote from Dieter Rams, to make things with using less but better things. So we just have to be creative about how we change our system for a better future.
Look at that.
We can do that.
Yes, I'm also optimistic because I think we've been talking a lot about the problems we are facing or we will face in future. We're talking a lot about possible solution, but I think now we are a little bit at the moment where we start to act and to live these possibilities. And I think there's a mindset changing, and I think this makes me optimistic that we now start to work on these topics. And finally, I think sometimes there should be a little bit more power to use new things, but I'm optimistic that we are now at the moment to do this.
And I'm optimistic because no one in this session mentioned alcohol, so these are my final words. And I would like now to thank you all for actively participating, and give back to Barbara, who's going to say a few words. And I think we stay here, right?
You can stay here. Yeah, thanks a lot, and thank you for everyone being optimistic. As well, without alcohol. Wow, this was a very insightful and full of content day, and full of in-between discussions and getting to know new people, new faces, new projects. And I feel there were a lot of things said of what keeps us on track. It's common dreams, it's common visions, it's staying optimistic, it's working on specific projects that are dear to our hearts. It's maybe gin tonic. But I feel one thing that is missing, and I discussed it in the last break, is time to reflect and time to calm down and sit and be silent about it. And I want to give you this chance, even though it's already a bit late, but we can have a few minutes of just, whoever wants can as well close their eyes, but I don't force you. And just review what happened today, whom you met, what you heard. We had a lot of discussions about what is not working, that the world is burning, that way too many resources are used, and way too much energy and CO2 is put into the air. But there were a lot of projects that work against it, a lot of people that shared their passions, their projects, their solutions, creating a post-fossil fuel society, sustainable transport, new legal frameworks, circularity, all needing collaboration and leaving the silos, changing the systems we live in, not thinking linear but circular, and open our views to create not moonshots, but earth shots and cities that are innovation spaces, that are green, where you can comfortably get from one place to the other, not in individualistic car transport, but maybe you even meet people while passing by, kids playing on the street, greenhouses, green energy, less resources used. And there's one thing that matters to make this possible. It's your voice and your action. And that's what Katharina Rogenhofer said in the beginning, and I really much like that. Potentially you are the one that make the difference. You are the one that convince somebody else to change. You are the one that moves some big stones by just speaking up, by just trying, by just working towards this common dream future that we could now dream about. With this, I thank you a lot of being part of this journey. We are now done with this part here, and as well with the online session. We have 2 more things that come up. Some startups arrived, I think, in the background, and we will have a startup get-to-know session on the 9th floor. You will have been separately invited for that. And there's still one tour to this temporary use project. Lucas is already waving, so whoever wants to go there is with Lucas. But to just finalize the day, I would like to hear some of your highlights, connections you made, what came up now in the visionary throughout the day, and we will end with that. So if there's anybody who wants to share something, just raise your hand or let me know. Yeah?
I think what is very special for me is that the openness of this environment, because you can just come here and watch people talk about from many different industries and sectors, and then get to know them, talk about them. And I think this accessibility and openness of this environment is what makes Smart City very special for me.
Thank you. You don't need to clap for everyone. Thank you.
I've been really impressed with the amount of interplay between the city governments, the startups like myself, and then just the stakeholders. I'm from the United States, and our local governments and all the way up to the White House are kind of a disaster right now. So it's fun to see that there's so much interaction in a common purpose of protecting what you have.
Thank you. Anyone else? One last voice? No? Okay, one more.
I have to admit that I'm really proud to live in Vienna. I'm not Viennese, I'm born in Linz, but today I was tempted to say I'm Viennese because it makes me proud. It makes me proud.
For a Viennese that I am, which I shared in the beginning, I think this is the biggest compliment if a person from Linz says she was tempted to say she is Viennese. I have one Upper Austrian in the team, and he would probably never say he's Viennese. Maybe he should have joined the conference. I will tell him tomorrow. So thank you for that. Thanks for being a great audience, for interacting. We now have Gregor taking all the startups that are signed up for the startup Get to Know to the 9th floor. We have Lucas taking all the people that want to still see the temporary use project and connect around that, taking everybody to the old Vienna Business Agency, Vienna Business University. Thank you very much. The day was long. And everybody else is invited to, and now I miss my clicker, because I need the picture now for it, home base at Karlsplatz to have some drinks together. Some of us will be there today. Some of us will be there tomorrow. So let's join for some drinks. If you want gin tonic, you need to bring the gin yourself. But there's wine, beer, and non-alcoholic drinks, how I understood it. But some of us already said we might take a bottle of gin and tonic in the packets. So thanks a lot. It was a great day. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Bye, online and offline.